Hey guys, it's Sleepy Reader. This is a takeoff on a video by Ghostwriter. I'm being distracted by the video behind me. Maybe that's just a bad idea. This is a takeoff on the video that I just saw Ghostcritic do. I think it called The Last Time. To me, it's kind of the last things I've done. And this won't be as rich and long as his, but I just thought it would be a good way to catch up with you guys since I've failed to post videos lately. So, the last comic book that I read just this evening was Iron Man 11 from Marvel Now, in the middle of the secret origin of Tony Stark. I'm trying to catch up on my Iron Mans. I get Iron Man through a print subscription, and I'm enjoying it so far. The secret origin part. Prior to this, Iron Man's been kind of laughable, although it's kind of weird having him sort of add this whole layer of what Tony Stark is really about. But anyway, it's interesting to see where it's going. Agent 42Q and I have talked about maybe doing a hangout and talking about Iron Man, but first I need to read them all. So there's that. The last trade that I've read was Kingdom Come. Again, because I plan to do a hangout on it, Sean, Riaz, and I plan to discuss the entirety of this graphic novel. So I reread it and discovered I didn't remember that much about it. Now it's very clear in my mind, so hopefully we'll discuss it soon. It's one of these amazing painted comics by Alex Ross, written by both him and Mark Waid, if I understand correctly. And I also enjoyed that. But I do have a lot to say about it, I think, so that should be interesting when Sean and I talk about it. The last comic I bought, or comics I bought, were today. I went back to my comic book store today to let them know that I'm going to reactivate my account with them starting in September. And while I was there, even though I told myself I wouldn't do it, I started browsing comics. And the only thing I could rationalize buying since I'm in this rule about not buying comic books right now, is some comics for the child of a friend of mine who's dying to read Spider-Man and wants to read it from the very first episodes, the very first issues. And so I told him, oh, well, you can get the Marvel Masterworks out of the library. But then later, after I told him that, I checked myself and saw that our library's Marvel Masterworks about Spider-Man only start with Volume 2. So I remembered that in the 80s, they started in Marvel Tales reprinting the Steve Ditko Spider-Mans from the very first issue. So I got him the first 3 appearances of Spider-Man, starting with what would have been Amazing Fantasy 15, but is also Marvel Tales 137, which also has the first Doctor Strange story reprinted in it. And then Marvel Tales 138, which reprints issue 1 of Spider-Man. And issue 2 of Spider-Man is reprinted in Marvel Tales 139. And I paid way more for these than I should have, really. But I just wanted to grab them. I think they were charging about $3 for them. But I'm sure you could get them for less. But this is a good way if you want to read Steve Ditko comics, the original Steve Ditko Spider-Mans in single issues. I think they reprinted the entire Steve Ditko run and part of the John Romita run in these Marvel Tales, starting again from 137. So anyway, it was interesting because my comic book store owner wasn't really that eager to chat with me, but I chatted with her anyway, and mentioned that I wouldn't start getting DC comics till October because of all the foo-fa going on in September. And I just said to her, are you as angry as people seem to be about this that I read on the internet? And she just very quietly said, much more than angry. and left it at that. I almost, in my mind, imagine comic book stores starting to refuse to order DC Comics or something if they're really pissed. Don't know if it'll really come to that. And they were going to accept my orders for DC Comics. That was my interesting little tidbit there. The last digital comic book I read, and also the last kids comic book I read, is Aw Yeah Comics number 4. Aw Yeah Comics is done by Art Balthazar and Franco, who are also the authors of the Tiny Titans and the Superman Family Adventures. Me and my daughter love their style of comics. I'm filming an iPad on an iPad. Great to be a 2-iPad family. But so it's about a hero named Action Cat and his sidekick Adventure Bug. And they are excellent. And I don't know how... I'm going to try and get the paper versions. I think they're not selling them through Diamond. I think the comic book stores have to order them directly from Aw Yeah Comics, if I'm understanding correctly. I'm going to ask my comic book store to order them, and we'll see. Now that I'm going back to the comic book store, we'll see if they can do that. The last book on comics that I own came into my ownership because this was a present at my birthday, which was about half a month ago. Is a book that I've already showed, which is the DC Comics Year by Year, a Visual Chronicle. I got this out of the library, and I guess my wife noticed how into it I was, so she bought me a copy for my birthday. The difference between the version I got from the library is it was just this, the version that is inside the slipcase that this comes in, which has the same basic art by Brian Sook, but colored differently and even kind of finished and inked differently, I think. And another interesting thing that, of course, my library didn't have is inside it comes with some prints by Ryan Sook. I wonder if different copies have different prints. This one has the penciling of Batman, which is roughly the same figure as here, but you get the full figure, so that was interesting. And then a color print of the Trinity here, which is interesting. Again, it's the same image as on the cover, but it's kind of removed from the rest of the picture. Not sure quite how they do those kinds of things. So all kinds of interesting things were done by this. They obviously loved this enormous picture by Ryan Sook and did a lot of stuff. So that's kind of cool and makes it feel a little more special to me. And my daughter gets a big kick out of the idea of this slip cover. But it's also dangerous to let my daughter near such a nice book because she just every time she turns pages, she kind of folds them with her hands as she's turning them. So mostly I'm hiding this book from her, which is kind of a shame because it's fun to look at, but we still have the library copy, she can look at that. Of course she wants the copy that I don't want her to get. My last book from the library, I haven't read it, is the graphic novel Stumptown. You guys may remember that I did a overly long video about Stumptown. This must be the volume of Stumptown before the one I read, I assume. The colors look quite different, much more low-key in the coloring, the kind of coloring where much of the page is in the same, in this case as we're looking at, greenish shade, and there's a kind of purplish brown shade that dominates those pages. I enjoyed, but wasn't crazy about the volume of Stumptown I read, and I wonder if this first volume will be better. And of course, there's the interest of the fact that it takes place in my hometown. Speaking of my hometown, the last family outing that I did was this morning. My family and I went downtown to the center of the city, which we haven't done in a really long time, just because sometimes it's a pain in the neck to do with a small child. But we actually had a great time. We took the bus, we visited some sort of plazas and fountains. My daughter ran around in a fountain and got soaking wet, and luckily we brought a change of clothes. We met up with a friend and had some coffee, and then we actually managed to take my daughter into the Fine Arts Museum and look at some art. And she did quite well, although we did have a fit at the end. But we probably spent nearly an hour in the museum, which I thought was pretty good for a 5-year-old. This one exhibition there had a little pamphlet that came with it. We saw lots of stuff, but this was interesting, and also the kind of art where you look at it and say, well, I could have done that myself. But still, these were on huge pieces of paper, these kind of black squiggly things. It was interesting. There was Native American art we saw. There was a collection of rare bicycles as shown as art, which was fun. And then there was a sort of art book collection that they had on display. I assume, I didn't look closely because I was with a small child as to what the print runs of these books were, but I assume they, print out 10 of them or something like that. And, only rare book collectors and art collectors would have them, or museums. It was kind of odd looking at books, but you couldn't look at the whole book. There's things by Kandinsky and Matisse and other more recent people whose names were not familiar to me, but kind of cool. And I kind of wondered, would there be a market for very small print run sort of high-end art comic books? What if you only published 20 copies of a comic book, and it was something really unusual and brilliant and printed in some special way, and then maybe sold each comic book for $500, and if you sold 20 of them, you'd make $10,000. I don't know whether some artists out there would be interested in that kind of thing. You'd have to have a reputation, and I don't know if there's a collector's market for that kind of thing, but I believe there's a collector's market for rare books by artists. Art books. Some people are book artists, in fact. I don't know anything about that, but I just sort of clicked with collectibles and comics, and we make a big deal about a rare comic book that originally had 100,000 copies printed, but the idea of books that only had 10 copies ever printed is kind of interesting to me. The last comic book related drawing I did many comic book related drawings today. I'm going to show you 2 of them. My daughter is crazy about My Life as a Teenage Robot, which was I think it was a Nickelodeon cartoon in the mid 2000s. Aughts, or whatever you call them. Anyway, so she endlessly wants to do her own My Life as a Teenage Robot comic book, and I was talking about the Hulk, and we were looking at pictures of the Hulk. So she was drawing the teenage robot, and I was drawing the Hulk. And here the teenage robot's deploying her gadgets like crazy. But my daughter Quacking Duck loves the fact that the teenage robot has endless numbers of gadgets that pop out of her body. And here the teenage robot's saying, "You don't like my gadgets?" And the Hulk says, "Me strong, no gadgets, no like." So that's that. And then later in the day, there's one episode where the robot gets android skin. So then my daughter was all interested in robots that look like humans. So we made up robots that look like humans. And here's her robot that looks like a human, which is XJ9, the teenage robot, in her human version as my daughter views it. And she made me make up 2 robots. We were going to color them in and give them red skin. So it was Jonah 24 and Jane 21. So those are the last comic book related drawings I've done. So that's my last things, not as broad and eclectic as Ghostcritic's, but kind of catches you up a little bit on what I've been up to, at least today. I hope you guys are all well. I hope you weren't too distracted by this Justice League video behind me. We've just moved our TV room down into the basement, and I'm kind of getting a feel for it, and hopefully we'll be fixing up our basement a little bit more. Let's see basement-y stuff here. Anyway, I hope you're all well, and I will talk to you later.